So in this video, I want to talk about power fantasies or just fantasy worlds in general, and the specific ones that I want to talk about is DarkMarchi, Overlord, and Jobless Reincarnation, and I will get into why I'm talking about them specifically in the video, but I really wanted to talk about them because they're particular series that I do really enjoy, and each of them has been a major focus over the last year, especially with Jobless Reincarnation airing Season 1 with Part 2 and Part 3 over the last year. Overlord Season 4 came out last year. And then, of course, DarkMarchi, the newest season, currently airing, but also had a first part airing mid through last year as well. And these are all series that, honestly, in my opinion, I really love because of that fantasy world. They feel very vast and unique. And I know some people will say, well, DarkMarchi isn't vast because it's all in a city, but vast doesn't mean wide always to me. It can be deep as well, in that sense of going in the dungeon and going down to these many floors, and each floor has a unique environment. I spoke about this in one of my other videos where I talked about, was DarkMarchi spending too much time in the dungeon with the newest season, because I've seen some people complain saying the newest season spends too much time in the dungeon. I've seen some people say that the previous season should have spent more time in the dungeon, and so there's many different variety of opinions, and that's what makes it really fun to discuss about, because you can look at different opinions, build a video around those ideas, and discuss about them. And in my personal opinion, I think DarkMarchi spending a lot of time in the dungeon is not a bad thing, but also spending some time outside of the dungeon is also good as well, especially in the city, because the city is very vast and has a lot of interesting windy roads and unique interesting places with some shady people, not so shady people, but there's also outside the city as well, but you don't spend as much time outside the city when it comes to DarkMarchi, unless the side stories are a little bit in the side story for Sword Princess. But even with both put together, a lot of the story doesn't spend much time outside the city, and a lot of it is inside the city because of just the dungeon itself and its importance to the story. But then the thing is with the dungeon is, because of how deep and massive and vast it is in its scope, there are many different floors, and those floors have their own ecosystems. Some with lava, some with crystals, some with massive waterfalls with intricate sort of rivers flowing from one area to the other, and some of it is connected to outside the dungeon and outside the city. And then there's just other like ecosystems with plants, habitats, moss, and then some just very barren and dead kind of rocky areas, and then there's like an entire arena in there as well. So the dungeon has a multitude of different types of environments. It's like, imagine grabbing like an MMO kind of world and grabbing all these different types of environments and then putting them into like a floor system. It kind of reminds me a little bit actually of like SAO, how there's all those floors and each floor has different types of biomes and environments, kind of like that in a way. I know some people might take it as an insult, but it's not meant to be. It's just pointing out that the dungeon has all these different floors, some small, some large, and they all have their own unique ecosystem and environment and textures and monsters and varieties that make it feel like it's an outdoor world, just with a wall around it, like a cave wall, but with different unique things going on. And that's why I think DarkMarchi's fantasy world is one of the best in my opinion. Overlord also has a similar thing with that, where it is so vast and massive. You've got elves, you've got beast people, you've got the human kingdoms, and you've got Aiza's little kingdom, and you've got his little test village where he has dwarves, goblins, humans, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the forest itself, and you've got Hamsky as a unique creature. There's so many intricate places that just all sort of intertwine together. Some of them are diplomatic, some of them work together, some of them are at war. The world building in, or the fantasy world building in Overlord is massive and vast, and especially if you go through the light novels as well. The light novels have a lot of hidden little Easter eggs that aren't in, well, not so much hidden Easter eggs, but it is compared to the anime, because the anime doesn't go over it, where there's massive areas just off the scope of the map where, yeah, you could go there and it could be some great fanfics, because the author won't be going into those areas because the author plans to finish the light novel series in 2 more volumes. So it's kind of sad, because of how big and vast the world is. There was just unlimited potential for the author to go into this massive, vast fantasy world. Though I would like to talk about why sometimes making too big of a world can be a negative aspect, especially if you have I wouldn't say writer's block, but writer's fatigue, where a writer becomes fatigued in writing a story, and because they expand the world too much, it can become too hard for them to close up a lot of those stories. That is a video for another day, because that is definitely a topic specifically aimed at Overlord. Then you've got Jobless Reincarnation. Jobless Reincarnation has such a beautiful world as well, but what I found very interesting about Jobless Reincarnation is that in the early stages of the story, it doesn't feel super vast, because it's very focused on a village, and even then you don't really see much of the village, if at all. It's mostly just focused on a house, a little bit outside the house, and Rudy kind of learning and growing and overcoming different issues inside that sort of small perimeter. And then he gets thrown into a whole new environment where he's in a different location, with different people, different environment, teaching a young girl that's quite boisterous and violent, but that leads him into another different part of the world. And they feel like their own pocket areas. And then, when the big thing happens in Core 2, or Part 2, he gets thrown into a completely different part of the world, almost on his own. It's just him, Eris, and another unknown individual named himself, the Stallion himself, the Beastman. I wouldn't say Beastman, but he is someone that they feared, and then they grew to trust over time. And it allowed them to go on a journey that felt very open worlded. So at the beginning, it felt very much in its own sort of pocket, almost like a dome area. And you went from one to another, and then it went into this massive open world, and all these places just intertwine and interact. And then you've also got other characters moving throughout the story, and not including what will be in season 2 and beyond in the light novels. But the world is very vast and beautiful, and just feels so vibrant to me. But why I'm bringing these up is because of a certain award show that brought up Best Fantasy World, and what won the award was Demon Slayer. Now, I don't dislike Demon Slayer. I think it's a cool series. I think it's fun. It's some good popcorn. But I don't think it deserved to win Best Fantasy World, purely for the fact that when you've got these other three animes, their worlds are so much more vaster, vibrant, and just colorful, in the sense of different characters, different monsters, different biomes. And even the music as well complements them quite a lot, especially Dharmachi's. Dharmachi's music is just so beautiful and really adds to the different zones. I wouldn't say which one of those should win, but I definitely think those are the three that should have been in the contesting for to win. Now, I know some people will say, well, Dharmachi wasn't on the list, but I think it should have been. I think the only reason why it wasn't is because of High Dive and the fact that it was on High Dive, so it wasn't allowed. But even then, Jobless Reincarnation has been shafted as well because of the type of series that it is. Some people out there don't like Jobless Reincarnation because of the style of the story it is, which is disappointing, because I think it is a great series that deserves some good recognition, but I think it gets a lot of unnecessary hate because it's just popular to hate something. So I definitely really enjoy this series, and I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments section down below. What really stands out to you in these fantasy worlds? Is it the music? Is it the monsters? Is it the characters? Is it the environments itself and how they do the color palettes and the trees and the terrain and all that kind of stuff? There's a lot of little things that you can put into the detail, and especially Jobless Reincarnation, when you had those backdrops, they felt like water paintings almost, in a sense. Some of those can be like used as backgrounds for your computer because of just how detailed and beautiful they are, and the scope of like the size of how far it feels like they go back. Like you can be like kilometers away from a city, and it looks so vast and massive and detailed. It's just one of those things that I really love. Also, there are other fantasy worlds also to talk about, like Eminence in Shadow, but that wasn't part of the awards because it was part of Fall, so it didn't get to be put in that category. But that is also another fantasy world as well that feels quite big. But I feel like once season 2 comes out for that, that's going to add to the vastness of that world as well. So there's so many fantasy worlds out there, and as much as I don't hate Demon Slayer, I just don't think it deserved that particular award, and I feel like it only won it because it became a popularity contest. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Any and all thoughts are definitely welcome. Of course, if you like this video, hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.